Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Force with Matt and Major. And today we have a rather sad episode. The G League playoffs are over, and unfortunately, the Skyforce did not bring home the championship. In fact, they didn't win a playoff game, unfortunately. It was kind of a disappointing G League playoffs, but if you listened or keep up with any of our content, you'll know this is not exactly the same team that they've had most of the year, with a massive blow, especially for Malik Williams getting taken right before the G League playoffs. So even the team that they prepped going into the playoffs was not available, in a very key piece in that. And so that first playoff game, they did end up dropping it to the Oklahoma City Blue, 93-111. They got absolutely dominated in the fourth quarter, specifically losing that quarter 34-18. Also had a huge second quarter deficit, losing that quarter 32-24. The other quarters, the Skyforce actually won. The first quarter 23-25, third quarter 22-26. But you can't overcome two, almost 10-point quarters, especially in the fourth quarter, only scoring 18 points and giving up 34. This was just, to be honest, just a terrible game for the Skyforce. There was no point other than the first quarter where it felt like they were in the game and that they were going to win it. Orlando Robinson had his worst game of the year, which was a very big surprise. He's been, Shaq down in the Skyforce and just absolutely dominating and super consistent, and just a bad game out of nowhere. Melendez had a red shooting game as well. Now, the guy I want to talk about in this game, and then I'll get to you, Matt, is I want to talk about the easy one, Cole Swider. Dude was absolutely on fire. And we say this every time, but if you've seen him play his minutes in the NBA versus his minutes in the G League, it's a completely different player. He's the greatest shooter I've ever seen on the Skyforce, including Duncan Robinson. And that is an absolute wild statement to make, but I fully support that. He was 6 of 9 from 3. Hit another and 1 3, if my memory serves me correctly. He was just actually dominant. 22 points, 9 rebounds. We've talked several times how he's starting to chip in the rebounding department, and he's improved that game. He showed that there on the biggest stage. He had 1 steal as well and 1 block. It was just overall a great game by Cole Swider. And you can tell he's having a great game because he played 42 minutes, most on the team. So, Matt, what kind of stood out to you in this game?
Well, yeah, just that fourth quarter run. They went on a 17-2 run. They entered the quarter, I believe, down by 2. Obviously, Maldonado got cooking a little bit. Adam Flagger got cooking a little bit. I feel like Robinson was really neutralized by a guy that we talked about in the preview, Olivier Sarr. He finished with 5 blocks, 20 points. He was exceptional throughout that game. Cole Swider was, again, finished 6 of 9 shooting from deep, 7 of 14 from the floor. He was remarkable the entire game. He was probably the biggest reason why they were in that game to begin with. Alondas, it wasn't his most efficient effort. He still had 24 and 8, but 7 of 25 from the floor, 2 of 12 from deep. It definitely wasn't his most efficient game. Caleb Daniels, it wasn't his best game offensively. 4 of 10 shooting. There were just guys who had down performances, and then the guys off the bench, Teo, Manny Camper, Moore, Olin Carr, they just didn't have enough firepower to kind of mitigate that gap a little bit. And so that was the unfortunate part. And again, when it's a close game and you allow a 17-2 run, I thought they were settling a little bit more, and it felt like it was a lot of 1 pass, 2 pass shoot. I don't think there was a lot of ball movement or player movement. And then I think the Blue were just getting out and running a little bit more in that fourth quarter. And that's just that was all she wrote. I think it was too much too late in the way that you don't want it to go in. So that was the unfortunate part. In all, jokes aside, it's funny how they lose to the to the team that wins the entire thing. Spoiler, the Blue won the title. So at least you could have that moral victory. I guess if you want that, but again, jokes aside, it wasn't the Skyforce's best offensive game. And we talked about it. Like the Blue were one of the best two-way teams in the league. I believe they were like a top 5, top 10 offense and then top 5 defense. Like this was an exceptional team, a team that went out and they would love to play with pace, just like the Skyforce. And they just kind of beat them at their own game when it was all said and done.
Yeah, I guess I should give them a little bit more credit. They were in the game at certain points, but in my opinion, it kind of felt like, you know, Skyforce are Heat affiliates. We keep up with the Heat a lot. A lot of our listeners are big Heat fans, so they'll be, that they know this example of they get down, they let up a run, and they're always just clawing back, but they can never get to that like level where you're like, oh, they actually got it. And then they just let up another big run. That's to me what it felt like. So that's more so what I mean whenever I say like I didn't feel like they really were in it as much. They had their moments, but it was always like you said, like they're always trying to claw back. They're always letting up a big run and having to come back from that. It's just not a recipe for success, and especially playoff basketball. You want to be that team that has the lead and it has a little leeway for if you let up a little bit of run, not have to be perfect down the stretch. And I think, like I said, I think we hit a lot of these things on the head. The game played out kind of how we thought it would. It was a little bit low scoring than both of us thought it would, but I'll give you some credit. You did want to go with the more low scoring game, and then you went back with the high scoring one. So you're a lot closer to that than I was. But like as far as how the game played out and the style, that was exactly what we thought it was. Alondes Williams, 7 of 25 from the field, 2 of 12 from the 3-point line. He did have 24 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds, and 2 steals. So it's not a terrible game from him, but obviously you'd like that efficiency a lot higher. If we got a standard Alondes efficiency game, that could have been real special there in the fourth quarter and be a real tight game there. But everyone has bad games, and like you said, it wasn't the best game from the Skyforce, so it's a little disappointing. In G League playoffs, it's like March Madness on steroids in the terms of competition because you're professional basketball, 1 game sample size. Anything can happen, and they unfortunately, especially in that fourth quarter, just did not play up to the level. Now, like you mentioned, the Oklahoma City Blue, they did go up and end up winning the championship. And I thought it was kind of interesting. So they beat the Skyforce. And then in the Western Conference Finals, they beat the Stockton Kings, which had 2 former Skyforce players on it, Stanley Johnson and John Elmore. And then in the finals, they played the Celtics affiliate, the main Celtics. And they played Drew Peterson, which, I mean, I'm the biggest Drew Peterson fan in the world. So they ran through a bunch of Skyforce people. So we had hope, if you're rooting for players, that someone that we liked and was on our team this year would win the title. And the Oklahoma City Blue just destroyed all of our hope in a matter of a week. And the Oklahoma City Blue won that finals 2-1. After dropping that first game, they actually came back and won game 2 and 3. So that was very impressive by them, and huge congratulations to them. They very much deserved it. Like Matt said, they are one of the best two-way teams in the whole league. So it's not any bit of a surprise. And we talked about why it was so important to get that 1 seed to avoid the Oklahoma City Blue. And that's exactly why.
No, yeah, you're completely on it there. You're completely on it there. But also transitioning into what we want to talk about next, congratulations to Alondes Williams. He made the All G League first team, 21.7 points, 7 assists. He was also the league's most improved player. And I believe wasn't he a finalist? I know Mac McClung won it, but wasn't he a finalist for MVP? Or did they officially disclose that?
I have not seen that, to be honest with you. I'll try to search it right here.
Anyway, won the league's most improved player. He jumped from 13.4 points to 21.7 points in the regular season. He spent last year in Brooklyn's organization. He jumped from 3 assists to 7.3 assists this year. It was also just a jump on opportunity, but I think for him, this was his first real solidified opportunity at lead ball handling duties and primary shot creation. He was their primary shot creator. He was the guy the ball was in his hands the most often offensively. He was yeah, he didn't pop off the page with scoring 21.7 points, but he did break the single season record, or a single game record for the Skyforce with 55 points against Salt Lake. And then he was just like, again, in the words of Eric Spoelstra, he was just ignitable at certain times. Like, and he's just a very good player. Like, he shot 37.9% from deep on 6.5 attempts. He was very good at getting to the lane and kind of like slithering his way through and finishing around the rim. Again, 7.3 assists. Like, there's always stuff to improve, but I thought he had an exceptional season. He was the Skyforce's probably one of their most important, if not their most important player this season. 1.2 steals, 0.7 blocks. So congratulations to him, as well as the other notable winners, or notable G League all first team, second team, third team honorees throughout this year.
Yeah, and Alondes Williams was second in the voting there. And
second. Okay, that's what I thought.
Kenneth Lofton Jr. was third. So he was close to winning it, and that award is voted on by the coaches. And so it's a huge honor, right? Coaches and GMs think you're the second best player in the G League, at least had the second best season. And honestly, I don't want to say it came out of nowhere, because I feel like that sounds a little disrespectful to, like the work he's put in, but just a massive improvement. Like you said, he was the most improved player, which I think that is an absolute incredible award to win. This is the whole league, and we say it all the time, built on development. It's a weird league where wins and losses matter, but the NBA teams are looking to develop their guys and get new guys. So most improved player in a league that focuses solely on improvement, that is a massive award to win. So a huge shout out to Alondes Williams. He's been putting in the work. I said before the year, and one of the very first Skyforce things I put out this year was Alondes Williams needs to improve his three-point shooting. And then I think he could really open up, because he's unguardable inside the three-point line. He's a menace on defense. He has the ability to be a good one-on-one defender, point of attack. He knows how to get steals. And I just said I thought he had to really improve his three-point shooting, and he did that. So I think that's a huge reason why he got that two-way contract. I mean, we talked about it before, but when you fix your fatal flaw, NBA teams are going to look out for you, especially if you're the scorer and then you're dishing out assists too. I mean, just an incredible season from Alondes Williams. It was an absolute joy to watch him.
Yeah. And it was interesting to me, because it was like, if you remember back to Summer League, okay, like, yeah, he spent last year in Brooklyn's system. I named it. I said his regular season stats earlier, but like his combined showcase stats last year: 12.3 points, 4.1 rebounds, 2.8 assists, 47.2%, 36.7 from me. Like, this was a guy who like was a decent role player in the G League last year, and he joins the Miami Heat G League team, or Summer League team, and it was just like, okay, like, I'm expecting this guy to pop off a little bit, but he really didn't get a whole lot of run, and it like surprised me. Like, he got some run toward the end. I know there was injuries to Hawkins at the beginning. There was injuries to Jovic, and so I think there was a little bit more wiggle room for him to get opportunity. But it still surprised me that he wasn't getting as much run as he was. And so, like, I was very interested to see how this season played out for him in the G League, and like, he surpassed, I think, both of our expectations tenfold, just from what he was doing on the court. Like, he didn't get a whole lot of run with the NBA team. Again, he joined he signed a two-way contract later in the season, so. Again, the wiggle room for that is a little bit difficult, especially towards the late in the G League season, when you're trying to get your like best guys to play like for these playoff games and whatnot. But I'm interested to see like how much confidence this season gives him. I don't know if he'll play in Summer League. If he does, great. If he doesn't, I get it. But heading into next season, because this could be a guy, like, I don't want to forecast the Miami Heat's roster or their offseason or anything like that. We're not even in the offseason yet. We're recording this on April 18th, the day after they lost their first play-in game, and Jimmy Butler sprained his MCL. I know we really don't want to talk or think about any of that, but that's where we're at right now. But I'm wondering to see, like, if he has a role with this team next season, because I can definitely foresee him having, like, at least a minor role, like a guy who he may not play every game. He may not even be in the rotation for most of the season, but a guy who can give you like 15 to 20 like decent spot minutes. And then we'll see what he adds to his bag, what he improves upon, whether it's his strengths, his weaknesses, or whatnot, ahead of next, like throughout from now until training camp and through the preseason and whatnot. But like, I'm just interested, like right now, I'm just interested to see how he kind of develops his game and how he kind of improves upon like his skill set and how that builds confidence for him heading into next season. I know I just went on like a very long-winded tangent, but that's just kind of where I'm at with Alondes, because again, he's played 78 G League games combined, showcase and regular season, if my quick math is correct. And so he's been a professional for 2 years. Like, okay, he signed a two-way contract, when is he going to get that additional opportunity? That's just something I'm keeping my eyes on, and I'm kind of keeping tabs on as we course through the upcoming months.
Yeah, I mean, he can look at Orlando Robinson for the pathway, right? Orlando Robinson just signed a standard deal. Everyone's dream, right? You're officially a full-time NBA player. He doesn't get much run. He's in the Skyforce, sent down a lot for assignments, get some spot minutes, but that's the next step. Like, it's a building block from here. You don't jump from being a G League standard contract to, NBA starter or NBA rotation player. You have to earn your spot. And I think Alondes is showing that. Like, he's showing he can improve. He's showing he'll work on his weaknesses. So I loved what I saw from Alondes, not only from obviously he was playing great, but how he was improving his game to mold it to be more of an NBA player in my type of thinking of he's now shooting the threes. And we know it's real hard in the NBA if you're a guard to not shoot threes. Like, you have to have at least that threat, and he showed he can definitely hit those open ones, and when he's hot, he can hit the tough ones as well. But also he had really good passing in this year, and then was putting in the effort on defense. So there's a lot of things that he showed he can do, and that's why he got the two-way. I mean, he showed he can play a role, he'll contribute, and he still has a lot of potential. So I'm excited to see his role too. If you remember back to that camp, a lot of people actually really wanted him to get a two-way or some type of deal then, because even though he didn't have as big of a role as a lot of people wanted, you could see it there. There was a lot of promise there, and a lot of people wanted it. So it is kind of coming full circle that he ended up actually getting it at the end, after having to show a little bit more and earn a two-way spot once one opened up. And then I do want to mention Justin Champagnie was second team All G League. So huge congrats to him. Champagnie was on the Skyforce for a good part of the season, signed a 10-day with the Washington Wizards, and then signed a two-way contract with the Wizards as well, and got some NBA run as well. So huge shout out to him. That's absolutely crazy that the Skyforce had two players, one on the first team, one on the second team All G League. So just speaks to how stacked their roster was. 5 total call-ups. Can't believe they were all on the same roster, plus 3 two-ways at that time. It's just a crazy roster that they had to start this year. So now we're going to kind of transition here into, real quickly, what do you think the Skyforce team needs? And we've talked so much about how there's so much change in the G League, so it would be stupid if we tried to predict their roster. So
yeah.
Let's say they have that same roster this year that they had in the playoffs. Okay. Let's say that. Like, what does that team need?
I mean, I think the easiest answer is probably just a little more firepower off the bench. But I just think like a skill that they could collectively improve upon. I'm not going to try to single out any particular player, but like just decision making. In the sense that like, yeah, their assist to turnover ratio was near the bottom of the league. You look at it and like, not all assists are created equally, but not all turnovers are created equally either. But they were last in fast break points, or I think, fast break points allowed per 100 possessions. and they were close to being last. And I want to say they were like a bottom 3 or bottom 4 team in opponents' points allowed off turnovers. And so you could make the assumption that a lot of those were live ball turnovers. Again, not all of them are created equally, but like you want to just kind of improve the decision making from that aspect. Like we talked about it before, how high they were in turnover rate, despite having multiple like good shot creators, whether it's self creation or creation for others, on their team. And so I think that's one of the things that I want to see them improve upon. Again, the point of attack, like we've hammered this before, but like the point of attack defense, you want to see them be a little bit more physical. You want to see them slow teams down a little bit, deter them from the rim a little bit better, like just a little stuff like that. We've hammered that point home already, but I think the main thing that I want to see them is like decision making. Like again, these guys are playing and now at a pro level with the bigger court, with different schemes than you were in college. And so you're having, and it's obviously the pace is different. Like you're having to make reads at a quicker rate than you were in college, with more space. And so just the toggling, whether it's like, okay, what kind of pass do I want to make? When do I want to throw this pass? Like when's the read open? Like depending on the action that I'm running, like what's the first read? What's the second read? Like what are my keys there? And just all that like little stuff. Again, it's different from player to player and team to team, scheme to scheme, like all that stuff. But I would just say collectively, if I'm copying pasting this roster from this year to next, I would probably just say like, again, just improve decision making. Again, it's something that you get with time. It's not something that you just are automatically born with, unless you're like some crazy good floor general. If you're in the G League, there's always some bolts that you can tighten up, and I think that's definitely one of them.
Yeah, and we've mentioned when we talked about the turnovers before, I do think it's so interesting that you have a team that had a lot of guys that were good at jumping passing lanes, like not be able to recognize as much that the defense can jump that pass. So a lot of them were live ball turnovers and just not great passes, right? So I thought that was interesting. Like you would think just theoretically a team that does it on the defensive end would understand how the defense could do that to them on the offensive end. It's kind of like the Miami Heat struggling playing against zone type thing. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. Like if that's something you excel at, you should know exactly what the defense is trying to do that very same thing. It's interesting that was a big struggle of theirs. And like you said, point of attack defense, and I'm just going to make it more broad, individual defense, to be honest with you. Too many times the guy was just getting blown by. It just wasn't great. They had offensive players, but a lot of them were streaky as well. It's a G League team. They're not going to be perfect, right? And no NBA team is perfect either. But they did have some fatal flaws. The turnovers, which then didn't help their defense, because you're getting out in transition, getting easy buckets. And then I thought they struggled sometimes when they couldn't play fast. So like, if your shots aren't falling, you probably shouldn't take as many transition threes or stuff like that. In those games, when they weren't falling, they seemed to struggle as like, what do we do now? Or when the game was slowed down, they weren't as great at that. They're more of a run and gun style. And you're susceptible to bad games, right? Like shooting games. They say defense travels. Defense is reliable. When you look at a lot of the teams that do really well, they have good defenses. The Skyforce could beat anyone in the G League, could kill anyone in the G League, but they go cold like they did, and they lose by double digits. So I think getting more of that individual defense, and then, like you said, that decision making, but I'm going to say not only in the passing and turnovers, but also in being able to run different play styles is a good way to say that. Be a little bit more diverse and have some more versatility to kind of be more matchup dependent and adapt to how the defense is playing. Not if they are able to slow down or you're having a bad shooting night, you're just completely screwed. So with all that said, I thought Coach Powell did a good job though. Overall this year, it is a really hard year for the Skyforce, just losing a bunch of guys. That's what happens when you have a good G League team. You're constantly trying to, plug and play roles quickly. And You don't get a big heads up that a guy's going to get a 2-way contract with another team. It's just you got to figure it out. It's not like you can really reload too much, especially at the end of the year. A lot of the guys that are going to be able to contribute at a high level are already taken. So I thought he did about as good as you can ask for. He did adapt the team. When they started the regular season, their defense was great. And then it kind of just started falling off as more and more players got taken. So I think overall great year for the Skyforce, though.
Oh, yeah. You can't, again, when you get nearly a half dozen call-ups in 1 year, and you still finish as the 2 seed in your own conference, like you're doing something right. You're doing something right. And like Orlando still played games even though he was on a standard contract. Cool. Like you still had dudes playing games even though they were either on 2-way contracts with Miami, or really just in Alonda's case on a 2-way contract with Miami, or Orlando Robinson on a standard contract trying to get some run because he's the team's third best center. But it's still a phenomenal year. Like you can't really argue that. You can't really argue that in just more ways than just one.
Yeah, so I'm real happy with how this season has gone. Obviously, I like them to take the title, but it was an exciting year. A lot of players got deals, which is super exciting. Love it for them.
That's our title. That's our players getting deals out. That's our title.
That's our championship, right? It's like whenever we watch Heat games and all the 2-way guys are in, me and Matt lose our minds. We're like, oh my gosh, there's Alondes Williams. Look at his shoes. That's usually what I say. I'm like, wow, he changed his shoes. I absolutely love when they get in there. The guys we're rooting hard for and get to talk about and cover, they get to see their dreams be accomplished. It's just a really exciting thing, even if it's not with the Heat. And in Drew Peterson's case with the rival and the Celtics, still love it for him, still love him, but really hard to pull for a guy in that green, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's terrible. But so now we're going into the off season here. We're obviously not going to have too many like game reviews to talk about, but we'll get some players on, some staff. We'll be able to transition to more player focused individuals when the summer league starts and everything. We'll start talking about that as well. So we got some exciting things planned for the podcast. And one cool note is Bryson Warren did officially declare for the NBA draft. So it would be hopefully to have him on and talk about him declaring and just what all you learned from the Skyforce. So big shout out to Bryson, as well as Jamari Bouye, Drew Peterson, Justin Champagny, Alondes Williams also, and Malik Williams, all getting their NBA deals and call-ups. So huge congrats to them. I'm excited to what we're going to see in this offseason.
I don't think when we went on watch playback for those final 2 regular season games against Toronto, I don't know how much the other guys liked me pointing out Malik Williams when he scored, when he kept, or not kept scoring, but like every moment that he had in those games. It's like, oh, there's Malik Williams, man. Shout out Malik. I mean, even though those games were also blowouts, so at the same time, at a certain point, I don't know how many of them cared because we were scoreboard watching the entire time. But that's beside the point. Yeah, shout out those guys. Shout out Bryson. 2 professional seasons with overtime elite, and now the Skyforce. Still 19 years old. So let's see what happens. I'm interested to see if he actually ends up with Miami in the summer league. Like if they take a flyer on him, considering he has been a part of their organization before. I don't know. Just a thought. If he doesn't get drafted, of course. But
that would be interesting. Hopefully we'll hear some stuff about that, and I'll keep us updated as best we can here. But once again, thank you all for listening, and let's go Skyforce.